let me just break it down the science of the autonomic nervous system. So you can think of it as like a seesaw, and because I like to just lay this out for guys so that they know what we're talking about when I start to drop some of the terminology. But think of your autonomic nervous system as a seesaw, and on one side of the seesaw is your sympathetic nervous system, which is the part responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. It's the stress part of the nervous system. It's what allows you to go get shit done, to go from the emails to the workout to it's that part. It's also the part that gets very much over indexed when you get into conflict with your partner. So that, or if you are, in an intense board meeting or meeting at work and, you feel a lot of pressure to perform and deliver, you're in your sympathetic nervous system, right? Or like your kids are yelling and you've had a long day and you're just like, man, I can't take this shit right now. That's your sympathetic nervous system. And on the other side of your nervous system is the parasympathetic, other part of the autonomic nervous system is your parasympathetic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for rest and digest primarily, right? So slowing down, feeling peaceful, feeling calm, having a sense of ease in your body. Now, the interesting thing about both of these sides is when you're in your sympathetic, that more stressed state, a couple things that are super, super important happen. Number one is that your breath rate per minute elevates. So your breath rate, how many breaths you take per minute, actually starts to elevate. So you start to breathe faster and generally more shallow in your body. So you're not taking like a deep breath into your belly or into your lungs. You're taking these short, shallow breaths right into your collarbone. And the quicker your breaths are per minute, the more that your heart rate is going to elevate. All right. So it's actually going to send your heart rate up. And so this is why, some guys that have stressful jobs, they'll start to track their heart rate and they're like, shit, my resting heart rate is at like 75. It's like, what's going on? Right. And what starts to happen when your heart rate is that high is that it sends a signal to your brain and says, we're in stress mode, release stress chemicals. And so you start to release adrenaline and cortisol and all those types of things, which create inflammation in the body, yada, yada, yada. On the other side is the parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic is lower breath rate per minute, lower heart rate per minute, and lower stress chemicals in the body. So you actually secrete different chemicals in the body when you are in a more parasympathetic dominant state. And again, it's not that one turns on and one turns off. It's that you just go into a more dominant state, right? So you kind of go back and forth. So when you wake up or when you're sleeping at night, you're in a much more parasympathetic dominant state. And when you are super stressed out in conflict with your wife or your kids, you're in a much more sympathetic dominant state. Now, what does porn have to do with any of this? Porn, for most men, is the fastest reset button for your nervous system. And so many men are living in a sympathetic dominant, stressed out state constantly. They wake up and check their emails. They go throughout their day. They go to bed at night and check their emails and wake up and rinse and repeat and do the whole thing again. And they're just stressed for so much of the day. We are under siege by and from stress for the most part as men. And so if you don't have proper tools or resources to help you balance out, to help you actually de-stress, calm down, relax, that aren't things like weed and booze, what you turn to is porn. Because all of those things, weed, booze, and especially porn, help you just hit the big red reset button on your body that force you into a parasympathetic state and release the neurochemicals that coincide with it. So I'm going to say one more piece, and I'm curious to hear what questions you have. But what a lot of men don't know is a couple things about arousal as a man and your nervous system. So a couple of things. Number one, to get an erection and maintain an erection, you have to be more in a parasympathetic dominant state. So you actually have to be more relaxed. This is why for a lot of guys, when they, go to get with a woman that they've never been with before and they're super attracted to her and they're kind of anxious, maybe they can't get it up. Maybe they get it up and lose it. Maybe they get it up and they come immediately, right? And so that's a stress response in your body. So if you want to get hard and maintain that erection, barring medical issues that are causing erectile dysfunction, you have to be in a more relaxed parasympathetic state. And the more aroused you get as a man, the closer you get to climax, the more that your autonomic nervous system tips towards that sympathetic dominant state. And then when you go to climax, you literally like redline for a minute, and it goes almost all the way into your sympathetic state, causes you to ejaculate. You have this massive release, and then it goes all the way to the other side. The seesaw literally goes wham all the way to the other side, and you go back down into a parasympathetic state where your body just fully relaxes and fully releases. You release dopamine, oxytocin, and you release something called prolactin. And you release prolactin, which in women has to do with milk production and a bunch of other stuff. And in men, it has to do with signaling relaxation into the body. So for a lot of guys, what's happened is they've literally trained themselves, like a Pavlovian training that every time they're stressed out and they want to relax, you go watch porn, you nut, you get off, you feel better, right? Stressed out, go watch porn, nut, feel better. Stressed out, go watch porn, nut, feel better. And you do this enough times, and what the brain realizes, because the brain is a pattern recognition machine and it's very fucking smart. And so what your brain realizes is, oh, if I'm stressed out, there's a super easy way out of this. It's porn. I can just go watch that, jerk off, get off, feel better. And so this is the pattern that plays out with a lot of guys. And the reason why it's so effing hard for a lot of guys to quit is that they are literally trying to get rid of one of the only tools that they have trained themselves in relaxation, in calming their nervous system, and learning how to what's called down regulate, because down regulate is just moving from the sympathetic nervous system down into the parasympathetic, moving from a stress state to a more calm, relaxed state. And there's many ways to do it, which we can talk about. There's one other thing that makes it hard to quit porn, but I want to pause because I just said a shit ton. I want to bring you in.
I want to unpack this a little bit and talk about the development of these tools. I talk a lot about there's skills that are needed in order to overcome your pornography addiction. A lot of them are centered around these deregulation things that we need. So the guy has recognized that is at the root of his compulsive addiction. It's become the only outlet for him to deregulate stress. He's recognized that. We don't need to talk about, how does he identify that? I think most guys are going to know, like, yeah, this is it, right? We have great resources that will help the guys identify that. But in terms of the development of tools, what are they? Like, what can a guy skill set acquire? And then how do we go about doing this? Because I'm sure it's going to require intentional, focused work, practice. So then in real time, when you need it, you have that lever that you can pull.
Yeah. So a couple of things really help. One of them, every man that I've ever given it to hates it, but it works. And this is what I had to do, by the way. Maybe I should just preface. I was really addicted to porn for a long time, very addicted to porn, and would watch it every day, every other day. And usually when I watched it was an hour minimum, like literally an hour minimum, sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours. Like it was pretty bad. It was pretty severe in my 20s and my late teens. What I had to do was every time I wanted to watch porn, I started by setting a timer for 5 to 10 minutes, sitting down, closing my eyes, and forcing myself to breathe and asking myself one question, which is, what am I actually experiencing right now? What am I actually experiencing right now? What I started to discover was that most of the time I wasn't actually horny and wanting to jerk off. I was bored. I was lonely. I was angry. I was sad. I was anxious. I was a whole bunch of other things, but aroused, and I didn't even know it, because in your nervous system, there's something called, like in neuroscience, they call it nervous system arousal, but that encompasses when you are in an intense emotional state. So if you are feeling anxious, you have what's called nervous system arousal, which is pretty much identically the same to being stressed out about something. So anxiety and stress map very similarly in the brain, neurologically, and in the body, in your nervous system. So I started by, for months, setting a timer, sitting down, closing my eyes, breathing, asking myself the question, what am I actually experiencing right now? Because I needed to start to understand what was the precursor to me wanting to go and watch porn, right? What's the precursor to you wanting to go and watch porn? So that's one thing. The second thing was I started to implement tools of regulation that helped me to calm and ground in the moment when I wanted to watch porn. Because again, most of the time, bored, lonely, anxious, stressed out, angry, whatever it was. Those tools are pretty simple. One major one is breath work. And I've had a couple guys be like, wait, you're telling me that instead of jerking off, you want me to do breath work? Yes. Yes, that is true. So I'm going to just give you three of them. Number one is meditation. You can start to use meditation. In the UK, as an example, they literally prescribe meditation instead of medication for things like anxiety and depression. Doctors are able to prescribe meditation because clinically meditation has been proven to be as effective, if not more effective, for things like depression and anxiety, full stop. So you can start to implement meditation, you can start to implement breath work. There's a very good type of yoga that I have found to be very helpful for men. It was very helpful for me. It is called yin yoga, YIN, yin yoga. It is a deep tissue form of yoga. It's infuriating when you start it. I'm not going to lie, because you get into a posture essentially that is opening up your deep tissues, your deep fascias, and you breathe into it. And it can bring up a lot of intensity. And so for me, when I was feeling that urge to go and watch porn, I would replace it with breath work, meditation, or yin yoga. And the yin is kind of a nice thing because you're getting into your body. You're having to regulate your breath because a lot of heat comes up, a lot of frustration can come up, and anger and all types of stuff. And you're literally training yourself to have a higher level of tolerance emotionally for what you're experiencing in your body right before you want to watch porn. Because remember, there are trigger points to us wanting to go and watch porn. Most of the time, those trigger points are experiential, they're emotional, they're things that we're experiencing internally. So those are a couple of very, very helpful tools.